Welcome to yet another edition of the Stats and Stacks podcast, where today we're going over UFC Macau Yan versus Figueiredo. First things first, make sure you smash that like button, give a follow over on Twitter, over on Instagram, over on TikTok, wherever there's social media. There's, excuse me, the Stats and Stacks podcast. Pretty weird week last week. Absolutely crushed it. We got 11 out of 13 fights right. Was on every single dog. Unfortunately missed out on the Anders fight. But I mean, whatever. We hit on everything else. It was a great night of fights. Great night betting. And we're looking to just capitalize and continue to close out the year and have a really good year here. This is it's going to be really hard on this card. This card is S. This might be the worst card the UFC's put on all year, to be quite frank with you. A lot of mystery, road to UFC finals. So a lot of these small Asian markets where these fighters are just the bad fighting the bad. And there's a ton of them on here. Again, this fight is in China. They want to showcase their Chinese fighters, and there's just not a lot of great Chinese fighters. I mean, Wei Li Zhang is great. I do like Yan, but she's in a tough matchup. I like Song Yadong, but he's not on this card. Outside of that, I don't know who the great Chinese fighters are right now. So kind of slim pickings here, kind of tough pickings here. We're going to try to get through this. A lot of over-unders because there's a lot of 50-50 fights, and I'm not trying to pick a side and lose. So I don't want to waste a lot of time on this card. This might be the shortest pod that we've had because it's just not an exciting fight card. Keep in mind, it's also on at 3 a.m. Eastern, so you're going to have to set an alarm and wake up real early to watch these fights. So can't wait to set an alarm to watch Nicholas Moda at 3 a.m. in the morning. But if you're a diehard, if you're listening to the pod, if you're wanting to make money, unfortunately, that's what we got to do this week. So let's just jump into the very first fight. Our 3 a.m. opener, we have the legend of Mahashate. I can't even say his last name. They just call him Mahashat on the UFC production team, so that's what we're going to do. Mahashat is a minus 200 favorite. He is a Chinese fighter here, going up against Nicholas Mota at plus 170. Over under set at 1.5. Over 1.5 is minus 145. Under 1.5 at plus 115. Let's start with Nicholas Mota because he's pretty easy to cap here. The under because he is a kill or be killed fighter. He has good striking. He's 31 years old. He carries a ton of power in his hands. 82% takedown defense. So most of his fights do mainly take place on the feet, where he is liable to knock you out at any point in time. He has an interesting record in the UFC with Trey Ogden. He has the big upset over Tom Nolan. He fought Manuel Torres. They're giving him a whole bunch of like up and comers. Cameron Van Camp was on short notice. And of course, he got knocked out by Jim Miller in his debut. That's kind of the story of him, though. He can knock you out at any point, but he is very low volume. He's very hittable himself, and he's very chinny. Most of his losses are by KO. He has a very boxing heavy style, doesn't throw a ton of kicks, doesn't try to mix in any takedowns. His jiu-jitsu is all right, but he's not going to use it. He wants to knock you out on the feet with his boxing. He does have very heavy hands. He has very quick hands, and he prefers to counter. And that's what happens with the lower volume people. A lot of time, it's just because they're counter strikers. It's very rare you see a high volume counter striker. If you're that low volume, or if you're a counter striker in general, you're usually low volume, and the same thing for Moda. But his cardio does check out, so that's nice to know. On the other side, we have Mahashate. A lot of times you forget he's only 24 years old. He himself is predominantly a striker as well, but it's interesting that he moved his camp over to Fight Ready, which is predominantly a grappling gym. So that's interesting. He fought there last time when he fought Gabriel Benitez. He didn't look great against Gabriel Benitez. I had a lot of money on him, and he won a split decision. That was kind of greasy. He has good striking. He has good power. His volume's okay. He throws more than Mota, but he himself is hittable, and he himself has been chin checked and put away before. So he's also hittable and chinny. He has 45% takedown defense, but a lot of that is fighting Rafa Garcia, who's a damn good wrestler, and took him down time and time again. He is the one that generally pressures forward as Mata is a counter striker. It's just he gets very impatient. He's not someone that can just sit there and play a nice technical game. He wants to brawl. He really, really, truly wants to brawl. He will have the crowd behind him, which scares me even more. You're generally harder to knock out when you're younger. He's only 24 years old. But if he gets impatient, as he has in other fights, where I've seen him have a close round and then just say fuck it and then just start scrapping, I am petrified the crowd is going to make him do that. If he wants to impress his hometown crowd, he goes out there and says fuck it. We have a very close, scary fight here. If he does that, he could get cracked. He could also put out Mata, so I don't want to pick a side. If anything, I'll take the younger, lankier guy in Mahashate as a pick. As a bet, it's sheer dog or pass with Mata, or well, mainly because he fought the better guys, or you can just take that under. The under 1.5 is plus money. If you want to take the alt line, take that under 2.5. I think that's very parlayable. I think one of them go to sleep within the first 2 rounds of the fight. So the pick is Mahashate. The bet is going to be the dog, or you can take that under 2.5. Next fight of the night, we have Long Zhao at minus 120 going up against Quang Li at even money. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 220. Under 2.5 at plus 160. Let's start with Long Zhao. He was in the finals of Road to UFC last year. He's 26 years old. He has good striking. He's a Dana White Contender Series vet. He ultimately lost to Christian Quiones on the Contender Series. He has good striking, good volume, 78% takedown defense, and that's big because most of the people he fought on Road to UFC were all wrestlers. Like literally his entire road, all 3 guys are predominantly wrestlers. So 78% takedown defense with people that just want to grapple the whole time is nice. And he himself will sprinkle in a takedown. He has okay offensive wrestling. I don't think he's that bad. Again, he's 26 years old. A lot of these fighters overseas are fighting cans, and they're a little overrated. He is fighting cans. He is a little overrated, but I see the potential, especially with him only being 26. He's improving. He's going to evolve. He has a ton of split decisions on his record. He fights everyone extremely close. Part of that is the amount of wrestlers he's fighting, but like he has majority decisions and a split decision loss in the final, split decision win in the road to start the road to UFC. Like he just has a lot of interesting decisions on here. Yeah, his jiu-jitsu's okay. Um, and his cardio's okay. He can slow down a touch, but he can ultimately go a hard 15. I mean, he's just a little bit of a generalist, and I like him. I do think he's one of these guys that can evolve into a good fighter over in the Asian market. On the other side, we have Quang Li, who is not developmental at all. He's 33 years old. He ultimately has pretty good jiu-jitsu. He's working on his hands. His striking is getting better. He has a little bit of pop in his hands. I'll give him that. But he's ultimately a grappler as well. So Long Zhao continues his fighting grappler streak as he takes on Quang Li. Lee's pretty low volume, and when he does get you down to the ground, he's position over submission. He is not one that's going to go out there, excuse me, and try to sub you right away. He will lay and pray to an extent, and watch that time tick away. His cardio is also okay. It's not good, it's bad. He can go a hard 15 minutes. His level of competition is god awful. But he's someone that was supposed to be on Dana White Contender Series. They needed a quick fill in for Chris Gutierrez. He filled in, did okay against someone, a ranked bantamweight. I'll give him that. And then they owe him fights now, so they're giving him a fight overseas. So we have China versus China in this matchup. Neither one of these guys are. They're both of these guys are at the very, very bottom in regards to just level and being in the UFC. You're scraping the bottom of the barrel with these guys being UFC caliber. But I will say that 78% takedown defense looms large to me. The fact that Lee does do some lay and pray and it's pretty low volume on the feet. This has another Zhao split decision written all over it. I like the over. The pick is going to be Zhao. He's the more well-rounded fighter. I know a lot of people are on Quang Li, and it's a very closely lined fight. Again, minus 120 and even money. But I like the guy that it's been damage over control as of late in the UFC, so the damage will be coming from Long Zhao. So the pick is going to be Zhao. The bet's going to end up being the over. You can bet Zhao split or Zhao by decision if you want a little extra on there. But I think the over is a pretty safe bet. So the pick is Zhao. The bet is going to be the over 2.5. Next fight of the night, we get a little greasy. We have Lanier Kavanagh at minus 370 going up against Jose Ochoa at plus 275. Over under set at 1.5. Over 1.5 minus 200. Under 1.5 at plus 150. Let's start with Lanier Kavanagh. If you see, he is the Chinese fighter in here. He trains a lot over at Great Britain top team. His mother is of, I forgot what nationality she is, but she's of Asian descent, and his father is British. So he is going to fly that Asian flag, the Chinese flag here for this instance. He's young. He's 25 years old. He's undefeated. He's 7-0, coming off of a vicious knockout win on Dana White Contender Series. He has a ton of power. His level of competition's okay. He was fighting over at Cage Warriors for the regional scene. His jiu-jitsu's okay. I believe he's a purple belt. He's another one of these guys that has pretty low volume because he counter strikes. Again, that's an effective route. And you do have a tendency to get a lot of knockouts. A lot of these counter strikers, they catch you, they have really good timing, and they do tend to be knockout artists, like to be honest with you. And he himself has wrestling. He will sprinkle in a takedown or two. He's very short, very muscle heavy. He muscles everything. He puts 100% into every single shot. When he goes to take you down, it's very big movement, explosive blast doubles. He muscles every single thing he does. And that does make him get a little tired along the way. He starts to slow in round three. Round one, he's fine. Round two, he slows a little bit. And round three, you can see him huffing a little. He's not gassed by any means. He's a 25-year-old kid. But he does slow down significantly from round one to round three. But ultimately, he'll sprinkle in some takedowns, and he's a power puncher. He's trying to counter you and take your head off, and he's been very successful at it. He's 7-0, and he'll have the crowd behind him. On the other side, we have Jose Ochoa, who's even younger. He is 23 years old. He himself is also 7-0. He was supposed to be on Dana White Contender Series. He had to pull out, and they like this kid. They're just going to bring him straight in without having to go through the Contender Series process. He has a 100% finish rate. This guy is an absolute killer. And he has one of my new favorite angles in MMA, Peruvian fighters. Peruvian fighters are awesome. They seem to have endless gas tanks. And this kid, I don't know, because he has a 100% finish rate. Though he's never even gone to a third round. He just goes to the second, if he doesn't get the finish in the first. But he does train. So this is the cool thing. He is a Peruvian fighter. He's been in the mountains his entire life, been in altitude his whole life. So you would assume he has good cardio. He's 23 years old, so you'd assume he have good cardio. But he trains at shoot to box. And that's easy because they all fight exactly the same. If you've seen Charles Oliveira fight, you've seen shoot to box. So that's exactly what Ochoa is, just a 23-year-old version. So he's super young, he's super green. Shoot to box, they all have really good striking. They all pressure forward, all action all the time, all have very good jujitsu. Wrestling's okay. It's not good. It's not bad. It's seemingly okay. Volume's usually pretty good. Only bad thing about shoot the box is that they all are a bit hittable. When you think of Charles, when you think of Felipe Lima, like all these kids coming out of shoot the box do get hit. They seem to be durable. Not everyone's getting put out. And he does pressure forward. Forward, forward, forward is just the anthem over it. Shoot the box. Takedown defense didn't look great on the regional scene, but he did have a pretty decent get up game. And again, he is pretty decent on the ground. So this is a fun fight. I do hate how high his chin is and how low his hands are, but that's a shoot to box style. So you have a all action fighter with 100% finish rate going against a counter striker that has ungodly power. One is 25, one is 23, and they're about to get in a scrap with the crowd. So I love this fight. This is probably the one I'm most excited for. But I think the volume will come from Ochoa. Don't get me wrong, he can die in there. Like he could very well get pieced up and put to sleep like Kavanaugh did to Hung Tao and or I'm sorry if I said his name incorrectly. The kid from Contender Series, he just fought like a 23-year-old, a fellow 23-year-old on Contender Series and slept him. So Ochoa plays with his hands low. He could very well sleep Ochoa again, but these odds are insane. Kavanaugh has not proven to warrant minus 370 in my eyes yet, especially if he's going to have less volume. And be the one backing up. So the pick is going to be Ochoa. The bet's going to be at Ochoa. And that's mainly just a play considering he's plus 275. You got to play that line. The optics are going to be in Ochoa's favor. The finish is probably coming from Kavanaugh, but Ochoa has 100% finish rate. So he has more ways to win. He has more volume, which will look good if it goes a distance. And he does have fight finishing power and submissions in case that comes up. So more routes to win, plus 275. Sign me up. Pick is Jose Ochoa. Bet is Jose Ochoa. Next fight of the night, we have Carlos Hernandez at minus 200 going against the name I've been fearful to say the entire time. Naim Dragal to Mendrabral to Menedibral. Oh gosh, I give me one more shot. So we have Carlos Hernandez at minus 200 going against Naim Dragal to Mendem Burrell. Close enough at plus 170. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 185. Under 2.5 at plus 140. Let's start with Naim Dragal, or let's just call him by his nickname, which is the Art of Knockout. Not a fan of that, but it is what it is. He's 26 years young. He is 8-0. He is the one the UFC is trying to promote here, considering he is an Asian fighter over in China. He is undefeated. He's 26. He has a 4-inch reach advantage here, and he starts fast, man. He has a ton of pressure, and he comes out there and tries to kill you. Very wild striking. It's not very technical. It's not very good, but he has some power, and he's coming out here to end the show right away. He does not take a step backwards. He has pretty sneaky good wrestling and a pretty decent ground game on him. I was actually a lot more impressed with his ground game than his striking, even though his nickname is Art of Knockout. I do think he's a better grappler. And when you look at his record, he has a lot of rear naked chokes, guillotines, ground and pound, rear naked choke, armbar. Like all his stuff is on the ground. So Art of Knockout is a weird name for someone who finished 6 of their 8 wins on the ground, but it is what it is. Sorry, 7 of their 8 on the ground. What I don't like is the fact that he keeps his chin way up in the air, like super high. He is asking to get knocked out. His level of competition has been abysmal. I mean, 15-10 is the best guy he had fought. Otherwise, he's fighting. He had that guy that was 4-0. Otherwise, he's fighting 0-0, 2-1, 2-2, 1-1. These aren't great records. I also don't like his cardio. He seems to slow down in every single one of his fights that go past 2 minutes. Again, he just he's very wild on the feet. He's kind of hittable. He can be countered a ton. And again, he has bad cardio and he keeps his chin way in the air. I'm not a fan of that. He's predominantly just a grappler with questionable cardio, with some decent power on the feet. On the other side, we have Carlos Hernandez, who apparently only fights Asian fighters. He fought Ray to, or how do you say his name? Ray Teixeira in his last fight, who is a very, very one of the best Asian grapplers in the UFC, if not the best. The man that could compete with him is Tatsuro Taira, who went out there and knocked him out in the second round. So I don't know why he had to fight the 2 best Asian fighters on the UFC roster, and now they're sending him over to China. That's peculiar. I don't know what Hernandez did to them, but it is what it is. He's 31 years old. He has good striking, sneaky good wrestling. He gets a lot of takedowns in his fights. 64% takedown defense. Now that's not great, but again, he fought Tyra. He didn't really take him down that much, but he did fight Dennis Bondar, who only wrestles. He fought Alan Nascimento, who only grapples. He fought Victor Altamoreno, who tries to split in wrestling. He fought Daniel Barres, who's a very good wrestler. And he fought Ray Teixeira, who is world-class wrestling. So although he has 64% takedown defense, and he's fought all wrestlers and has been able to sneak in some takedowns himself. His jiu-jitsu's okay, again, staying safe against people like Sierra, not Cemento. Not Cemento got him. But other guys, he was able to stay safe. He has a lot of split decisions on his record himself because he's kind of pillow fisted. He doesn't hit particularly hard. He throws a decent amount of volume out there. Looks pretty good on the feet. I will say he's the better striker here. Art of Knockout hits harder, but Hernandez definitely throws more and is more technical. He has a pretty good get up game. That's the other thing. Although he gets taken down quite a bit, he's very good at getting back up, and he has very good cardio. So I very well see Art of Knockout going out there, swinging a little bit, realizing he's not the better striker, and going for the takedowns. And I see him getting the takedowns. The problem is Hernandez has great cardio. Art of Knockout does not. So although he'll continually get takedowns in the first round, second round they're going to be harder to come by, and third round I think Hernandez would absolutely smoke Art of Knockout. So I'm all over Hernandez here. I fully anticipate him losing round one, and then I think he's going to absolutely piece him up the next two rounds. So the pick is going to be Carlos Hernandez. The bet's going to be Carlos Hernandez. If you want to take the over 2.5 at minus 185 because it's a better number than the minus 200, you can. If you just want to take Carlos Hernandez to win at minus 200, you can do that as well. Next fight of the night. Another interesting one. We have our first road to UFC fight here. So these we can go by a little quicker. We have Xiao Kan Feng at minus 300 going up against Ming Shi at plus 240. Over 2.5 minus 450. Under 2.5 plus 300. Let's start with Ming Shi because she's not supposed to be here. She is 30 years old. She is like 5 foot, and she was an underdog in every single one of her road to UFC fights. She is the one that they brought in to potentially lose and make another girl look good, and she kept winning. And the UFC is like, fuck, we can't get rid of this girl. She won a close decision in her first fight. She won a split decision in her second fight. She's 30 years old. She's 16 and 5, so she is not some young, shiny prospect. She has 58% takedown defense. Her jiu-jitsu is not great. It says she trains catch wrestling, but she is not a good wrestler. But she does have good striking and she has good cardio. She's very, very tiny, zero power whatsoever, hence her going to a bunch of split decisions as well. Again, she's probably the more technical striker in a lot of these matchups. It's just she doesn't do a lot of damage because she's so goddamn small, is not hurting anybody. So it kind of confuses the judges. You could take her down, but she uses her cardio as a weapon. She gets back up. And again, she's just a good striker with good cardio who has found a way to stay safe and keep sneaking out these decisions, much to the UFC's dismay. On the other side, we have the A side for sure. Fang is 22 years old, so she's someone that is super young and can build. She is 10 and 2, so she has the shinier record. She's absolutely massive. We talked about how small she is. Fang is huge. She is, let's see how tall she is. 5'7". So Shang is 5 foot. She has 7 inches on her. She has a 6 inch reach advantage on she. She has good volume. She has 70% takedown defense. Not that it matters because she's a striker, but Fang is also a striker and she hits much harder. Fang also has much better jujitsu. She has a decent amount of power on the feet and has some knockouts on her record. And her cardio, she's slowed down before, but she's pretty good on the ground. I'm sorry, but she's pretty good in regards to cardio. On the ground, I'd probably give her the edge too. So I think overall, technically on the feet, it's 50-50, but Fang hits harder. On the ground, it's Fang. Wrestling, it's Fang. Who the UFC wants to win is Fang. I think it's not even close. The pick is going to be Fang. The bet's going to be Fang. And the Ming Shi miracle run ends on Saturday morning. Another road to UFC fight here. We have Dong Hoon Choi at minus 125, going up against Kiro Singh Sahota at plus 105. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 210. Under 2.5 at plus 155. Let's start with Sahota because he's someone that people are kind of hyped on, but I don't think he's good at all. He's 12 and 2. He's 29 years old. He'll have a 7.5 inch reach advantage because the dude is literally Sean Woodson of flyweight. He has 50% takedown defense. His wrestling is god awful. He throws pretty decent volume, but his striking's not very unorthodox. He throws a lot of like 12 to 6 elbows on the feet. A lot of weird shit that you would think like Trevor Peak is concocting and his training is kind of the weird stuff that Sahota's throwing out there. He's very slow. He doesn't hit hard whatsoever because he doesn't have an ounce of muscle on his body. This dude is all skin and bones. Like, I am not kidding you when I say his frame is very reminiscent of Sean Woodson. His cardio's good. I'll give him that. And although he has 50% takedown defense, he does have a good get up game. He's able to get back up to the feet. Um, he's just very hittable. His jiu-jitsu is pretty decent. He's just physically slow on the feet. That's all I can say. He's just not an athlete. He's very, very skinny. He knows what's going on. He has a ton of experience. I mean, this guy, his amateur fights. I don't know. Look how many amateur fights he's had. I like. It's very seldom that you see someone with 18 amateur fights before going pro. Sorry, 19 amateur fights before going pro, and now he has another 14 pro fights. So the dude has fought a ton. He's very experienced. 7.5 inch reach advantage, but again, he's 29 and he's all skin and bones, and that's that. On the other side, we have Choi, who is all muscle. He's 25 years old, 8-0 undefeated prospect. The only thing is he fights people pretty close himself. Both of his wins on the road to UFC were split decision wins, so they could have gone either way. He could have been eliminated twice. His level of competition hasn't been great, nor has Cejudo's, mind you, any of these road to UFC people. Their level of competition's not great. I'm assuming he'll have the crowd behind him, but I don't know how the Korean and Chinese like favor each other. I'm not too certain. He has pretty good volume. He has sneaky good wrestling. He's a judo black belt, and he will mix in the takedowns here and there. And if he starts to lose on the feet, he does show high fight IQ. He prefers to strike. He's definitely the harder hitter of the two. He definitely has good cardio as well. But I've seen where he got pieced up on the feet a little bit and decided, okay, I'm wrestling now. I've seen where he tried to wrestle before, realized the other guy was a good wrestler, and said, okay, we're striking now. Like he has pretty decent fight IQ for a 25-year-old kid. His jiu-jitsu's all right, especially with that judo black belt background. All in all, he's a good prospect. I don't think he'll be much in the UFC, but I do think he has enough to beat Cejudo. Again, optically, he's going to be hitting much harder. Optically, he's the only one that will be getting takedowns, and optically, they both have good cardio. So if he mixes into takedowns with the harder shots, I don't hate him at -125. It's another closely lined fight, but I side with Vegas here. Pick is Dong Hoon Choi, bet is Dong Hoon Choi. Next fight of the night, we have another road to UFC fight here with So Young Yu at -150, going up against Balin Genesoli at +125. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 -175. Under 2.5 at +135. Let's start with Su Young Yu. Su Young Yu is 28 years old. He has a 13-3 record. He has pretty good wrestling, 75% takedown defense. Striking, not great. Very questionable on the feet. Volume, very low on the feet. He has a tendency to back up and look a little uncomfortable sometimes when he's forced to stand up. Um, his cardio, he can slow down, especially in round three. He's another one of these guys where I saw him look completely different in round two compared to round three. And round two is kind of a toss up there. So round one, he looks great. Round three, he looks bad. Round two is kind of in the middle. He's a grappler through and through. He has good jiu-jitsu. He has good wrestling. He's hard to take down. And on the feet, he swings really hard. It's just very low volume and not very technical. On the other side, we have Jenna Sully, who is 28 years old. He has a lot of experience himself, being 19-5. He's going to have a 5 inch reach advantage in this matchup. He also has very good jiu-jitsu. His wrestling's okay. I will say Yu is probably the better wrestler. But in regards to standing, Jenna Sully's probably the harder hitter, probably the better striker here. He himself is pretty low volume, but he has 80% takedown defense. So offensively, use the better wrestler. Defensively, I think Jenna Sully is going to be very difficult to get down. His cardio's okay. It checks out. Jiu-jitsu, I'm definitely giving an edge to Jenna Sully here. He has a ton of submission wins, some ground and pound wins. So I do think although neither one of them can strike, they're both god-awful strikers. I think Jenna Sully hits harder. In regards to the BJJ, it's definitely advantage Jenna Sully. In regards to the cardio, I'd say advantage Jenna Sully. In regards to the wrestling, I think it's a wash. Gun to my hand, I'll say you. But Jenna Sully is not an easy task to take down. Neither one will be anything in the UFC, but they're fighting each other. And if I have one guy that I think has better jiu-jitsu and better cardio and better striking at plus money, that's the only way I'm looking. So the pick is going to be Jenna Sully. The bet's going to be the over, or it's going to be Jenna Sully as a dog. I like him as a dog shot here. Next fight of the night, we are into the main card and we are done with the road to UFC fights. But we do have road to UFC vets. We have Ming Yang Zhang at minus 310 going up against Ozzy Diaz at plus 245. Over under set at 1.5. Over 1.5 plus 185, under 1.5 minus 250. Let's start with Ming Young Zhang. He's ass. He's very, very bad, but he is going to have the crowd behind him. He is the Chinese fighter here. He's 17 and 6, 26 years old. He is okay striking with a ton of power. The dude just goes to the middle of the octagon and swings, and he can knock out anyone at any point. He's a very, very, very fast starter. Like his fights are gunfights immediately. There is no feeling out process. He's a finisher. I believe all of his wins. I think he has a 100% finish rate. That's all great stuff. The bad stuff. Uh, he's a little chinny. He has bad jujitsu. He has bad wrestling. He has bad cardio, and he has some bad losses on his record. I don't know if you recall the guy Askar Askarov, or sorry, not Askar Askarov, that Askar guy that fought Alonzo Menafield that the UFC cut because he really had a losing record and lied about how good and lied about his wins. That guy has very limited film. One of the fights you can watch of him is him knocking out Zhang. Not a good look. Not a good look at all. This guy's the definition of killer be killed. Again, he is a one trick pony. All he can do is go to the center of the octagon and swing and bang. On the other side, we have Ozzy Diaz. Ozzy Diaz is no prospect. He is 33 years old. Unlike Zhang, who has bad losses, he does have good losses. I mean, losing to Joe Pfeiffer is no big deal. Who was his other career loss? It was Joe Pfeiffer, and he lost to Dominic Reyes as an amateur. That's perfectly fine. Getting subbed by Dom Reyes in 27 seconds isn't great, but it is what it is. He's also been finished every single one of his losses. That's not a great look. So he's a little chinny. He's been subbed before. His jiu-jitsu is not good. It's not bad. I'll say he has a BJJ edge here. It's just he reminds me of Kennedy Nzechukwu where he does the rope a dope a little bit. He lets you hit him, and then you gas out, and then he comes and he tries to knock you out, and that's how he keeps winning these fights. It didn't work against Joe Pfeiffer. He ultimately got knocked out in round two. But you see a lot of his wins are like the very end of round one, the very end of round one, halfway through round two. So he lets these guys come out, swing on him, and then he goes out there and he finishes you. He doesn't have like ungodly power where he just comes out like Zhang and tries to finish you. The problem is Zhang goes to the center of the octagon and swings, and he does not have cardio. If he connects on Diaz, that little rope a dope is not going to work. If Diaz is able to stay safe doing his rope a dope, Zhang is going to gas out. The You're kind of guessing which one's going to occur, and I'm going to go ahead and say Zhang gets the win, and mainly because Diaz is a perennial middleweight. This fight is light heavyweight. So letting someone 20 pounds heavier than you, voluntarily letting them swing on you is probably a bad idea. It's probably ill advised. Definitely take a shot on live betting if Ozzy survives round one. I'll go ahead and I'll take Zhang straight up right now as the pick. In regards to the bet, definitely a under 1.5. I don't think Zhang has the cardio to go over 1.5. I don't think Ozzy has the chin to go over 1.5. So something's got to give. Minus 250 is not great. So if you really want value, you can just live bet. You can just wait, see if Ozzy Diaz survives round one, and if that thing hits round two, I am smashing that Ozzy Diaz live bet button because he's obviously going to get absolutely murdered in round one if he's still alive. And then he's going to come back and he's going to knock out Zhang in round two. So the pick is going to be Zhang. because I do think he just catches him early. But the bet's going to be a live bet on Ozzy Diaz or the under 1.5. Next fight of the night is the first fight with actual competitors. We have Volkan Ozdemir at plus 210 going up against Carlos Olberg at minus 260, over 1.5 minus 170, under 1.5 at plus 130. Let's start with Volkan Ozdemir. No time's okay. He's getting older. He's 35 years old. He has good striking. And I'll give him his credit. He has 7 career losses, but I mean, they're to Daniel Cormier, to Magomed Ankalaev, Nikita Krylov, Yuri Prohaska, Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes. All of those guys are top 10. So he's only lost to top 10 talent in the world. His jiu-jitsu's okay. It's not great. His takedown defense is pretty solid. Offensively, he's not going to wrestle. He just wants to press her forward and box. That's all he wants to do. He throws pretty decent volume. His cardio's okay if he's only striking. If you're grappling with him, he does get tired. But he's fighting Carlos Olberg. He's not going to grapple with him at all. Carlos Olberg is also just a kickboxer. He's 34 years old, 10-1, coming off a few injuries, so be weary of that. But he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. He has really good striking. He has pretty decent power himself. Cardio, I've seen him look terrible and gas out, which was the reason for his only loss. I've also seen him get a third round finish with just a few seconds left. His level of competition is what scares me, though. Him being a minus 260 favorite on this little 6-fight win streak, I get it. He's on a win streak, but honestly, Alonzo Menafield is one of the chinniest like heavyweights on the roster right now. Like it or not, I know he hits like a truck, but look at his record. All his losses are by KO. He's chinny. He beat Dawoon Jung, who's not, that's probably the best win on his run here. Ihor Pretoria is now at middleweight and god awful. Nikolai Nuragamenu is cut. Stefan Njikui is cut and also a middleweight. Fabio Charant is also a middleweight and cut. So he literally has one, and then he lost to Kennedy. So he has one win over someone who is still on the roster. This run's very questionable. It's not as good as people think. He's just Izzy's boy. He was the Australian Bachelor. He trains at City Kickboxing with Izzy and with Dan Hooker. And he is good on the feet, and he does have a ton of power. I will say he looks very uncomfortable when guys pressure him. He wants to, in quote unquote, have a pretty fight, keep it at range, throw some kicks. He has a mean check left hook. Like it's probably his best strike he has. That's what he wants to do. If you pressure him, it doesn't look like he enjoys getting hit at all. However, Alonzo Menafield pressured him and he got a win. Pretoria pressured him and he got a win with that check left hook. Same with Nicolau Negramanu. Like literally all of his wins are because they pressured and he hit him with that check left hook. So I don't know. You would think Ozdemir, who's someone who likes to pressure forward and box, he could potentially he's only lost to good guys. Olberg has beaten nobody. How good is Olberg truly? He hasn't really proven anything. But the one thing Olberg is good at, it's probably going to be available to him. So I was going to lean Olberg. I picked Olberg, but then I look at the line plus 210 on Ozdemir against unproven Olberg. This is the prove it spot to me. So the pick is going to be Carlos. I do think he catches him with a check left hook. But if he doesn't, then he's pressured and he's uncomfortable, and moving backwards does tire you out, and he gets tired doing that again. I'm on Uzdemir at plus 210. So the pick is Carlos. The bet's going to be Volkan at plus 210. It's a sheer Vegas odds play. Next fight of the night, we have Kong Wang at minus 1,000 going up against Gabriela Fernandez at plus 600. Over 2.5 minus 155, under 2.5 at plus 120. Let's start with Kong Wang. She's who the UFC wants to win. She is the Chinese fighter. She will have the crowd way behind her. She's 32 years old with not good. She has great striking. Why is her striking so great? You're going to hear them talk about it ad nauseum. At 22 years old, she beat Valentina Shevchenko in a kickboxing competition. They're going to talk about it over and over and over. Is her striking that good? Yeah, it is. It truly is. She has some wins on the regional scene by submission. She's an equal opportunist. She has 2 decisions, 2 knockouts, 2 submissions. That's pretty clean cut here. She has been working on her grappling extensively because her striking is so good. Her cardio seems to check out. She's massive. She's extremely powerful. She's a complete package. She's 32 years old. She's in her prime. Yeah, man, as long as she just keeps working or grappling, because everyone's going to try to wrestle her, she's it. She's actually a very, very good fighter. On the other side, we have Fernandez, who is 31 years old. She herself is predominantly a striker, but she's going to be a little outclassed here. She has okay jujitsu. She's not a wrestler. All of her losses are because she got out wrestled and grappled. But she has mixed in takedowns in the past. She trains at MMA Masters, which is predominantly a grappling gym, so that's pretty interesting that she's a striker there. That's kind of like Mahashate being at Fight Ready. But while she is on the feet, she does tend to get hit a lot. She's pretty hittable. Carly GD's only had like 4 pro fights, and she landed over 160 significant strikes on her. That's not a good look. She has 59% takedown defense, so she's not a good wrestler herself. Um, I don't know. She pressures, but Kong Wang's very good striking going backward. So this is the UFC just trying to force Wang down your throats. And I think Wang is going to do what they want her to do. She's going to get the job done. It's striker versus striker. Only one is a much better striker. So the pick is Wang. You can't bet her at minus 1,000. So you're looking at the over under here. They're going back to the old or the gold gloves, I'll say. So maybe a little less power. Gabrielle's never been knocked out before. Maybe I'll touch that over 2.5 at minus 155. That's the only way I'll play it. Otherwise, it's a complete stay away at these odds. So the pick is going to be Kong Wang. The bet would be the over 2.5, but I have very little confidence. Next fight of the night, we have Kanan Song at plus 155 going up against Muslim Solikov at minus 185. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 170. Under 2.5 at plus 130. Let's start with Muslim Solikov. He's a very good striker. He's the king of Kung Fu. He has sneaky good wrestling. He's from Dagestan, for fuck's sake, so he just naturally comes out the womb being able to wrestle. His jiu-jitsu's okay. Problems with, and he's fought a really good level of competition. Problem with Muslim Salikov. If this fight was 10 years ago, I'd be all over him. Problem is, he's 40 fucking years old right now. And with that 40 years old, he's starting to get a little chinny. We saw him get knocked out by Randy Brown. We saw him get knocked out by the Leech. We saw him get rocked by Nicholas Dalby. Yeah, his chin's starting to fade with age. He as well as his cardio. His cardio is fading him as well. He's always thrown flashy spinning kicks and spinning back fists and all these cool kung fu moves. But he does that very seldom, very low volume with all the spinning attacks. So he'll mix in takedowns. He throws with a ton of heat, a ton of power, and the stuff looks really cool and really, really pretty when he throws. It's just not in volume. It's not a ton of it. And he has a little bit of a chin problem as of late and cardio problem. On the other side, we have Kanan Song, who's the opposite. He's pretty basic. No spinning attacks going crazy on his end, but he is a pretty decent striker. He'll have an inch and a half reach advantage in this matchup, and he'll have the crowd behind him, being the Chinese fighter. He has good striking. He has good volume. I don't like that he doesn't believe in head movement. He's pretty hittable on the feet. He has 72% takedown defense, will be an interesting number for Solikov, who will sprinkle in a takedown. His jiu-jitsu is not great, but neither is Solikov's. His level of competition is pretty good. He fought Ian Gary. He fought Izzy Adesanya. He's not winning any of these fights. His wins aren't good. His level of competition's good. His wins are not. His cardio's good, though. It checks out. It'll go a hard 15 minutes. He's a little chinny, kind of not. He's more of like a wear and tear guy. Like he has a lot of knockouts where he got knocked out in round 3 or end of round 2. It's more of an attrition thing than you coming out here and flash KOing him. He's just kind of physically slow. I don't like how slow he is. Muslim's the faster guy, even though he's 40 years old. But Muslim is going to slow down and Song does not. This has split decision written all over it. What I think happens is Muslim comes out. He looks great round 1. I think round two is going to be pretty questionable, but the crowd will be behind Song trying to make a comeback. And then round three is all Song, as Salikov has nothing left to offer as he's a gassed out 40-year-old. So it really comes down to round two. Song has a ton of split decisions on his record, as does Salikov. And I'm just going to go with the crowd here. So the pick is going to be Kanan Song. The bet's going to be Kanan Song. Or the pick will be Salikov, but no. The pick is Kanan Song, bet is Kanan Song, and I think he's going to win by split. I will have a bet on the split decision at plus 900. And his money line at plus, what is it? Plus 155. That's a good value. I'm on this dog too. We have Yan Jinan at minus 210 going up against Tabitha Ricci at plus 175. Over under set at 2.5. Over 2.5 minus 450. Under 2.5 at plus 300. Let's start with Yan Jinan. She's good, man. She's a very, very good fighter. She is the Chinese woman in this matchup. She'll have a 2-inch reach advantage to go along with her crowd. She has great striking. She has some of the best striking in the weight class. A lot of girls are scared to strike with her here. She has good cardio. She has good volume. She's fought a good level of competition. Everything is good with her on the feet. The ground is her issue. First of all, she's 35 years old. Secondly, her jiu-jitsu has never been great. We saw Carla Esparza get a TKO over her, and we saw Weili Zhang choke her out in her last fight. Now, it shows decision, but that's because she got choked out with 0 seconds left, was completely unconscious, eyes rolled behind her head. Her team ran over to the octagon and picked her up in between rounds, woke her up, and she continued to fight. So she has heart for days. She's not going to quit on you. She's a much better striker in this matchup, but her jiu-jitsu's not good. And her wrestling's not great. That's the other thing. Carla's a great wrestler, was able to get her down. Marina, when you really look at her fights, Angela Hill doesn't wrestle. Karolina Kowalkiewicz doesn't wrestle. Claudia Gadelha will try to wrestle, but can only do it for a round. Carla Esparza can wrestle for a lot, and she took her down and ultimately finished her in round two. Marina Rodriguez doesn't wrestle. Mackenzie Dern is world class on the ground, but is one of the worst wrestlers in the weight class. Jessica Andrade wrestles when she wants to. She got knocked out quick in that fight. And then Weili Zhang took her down 6 times. So when you really look at it, she has 4 career losses. And the first loss was by submission. So she got taken down and finished. Second fight was TKO. She got taken down and finished. Third fight was a controversial split decision. I had Marina Rodriguez, and I thought Yajinan won. And then the fourth loss was a decision. She made it the distance, but she got taken down 6 times and gave up 15 minutes of control time. She has a big grappling deficiency. Tabitha Ricci is a world-class jiu-jitsu practitioner. Can she take her down? Yan Janan's much bigger than Tabitha Ricci. Tabitha Ricci's tiny. She's short. She's stocky. She has a ton of muscle on her, but she's not a very big girl for the weight class. If they had an anim weight, she'd probably be able to make it, to be honest with you. She's 29 years old. And again, wrestling and jiu-jitsu is her bread and butter, but her striking has gotten much, much, much better. Her cardio, she used to slow down in her fights. We saw, especially in the Maria Oliveira fight, she used a wrestling heavy game plan and she gassed out. Um, but her cardio's gotten much better as of late. And the UFC's behind her because the UFC's behind her boyfriend, that boxer. So she has a UFC hire behind her. She's had good volume as of late. Her striking has looked much better, I'd say, ever since the Lupi fight. She came in on short notice, got sparked by Manon Firo, no shame there. Polyana Viana, she took down and dominated. Maria Oliveira, she took down and dominated. And then Jessica Benet, who's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, she took down and submitted. So she has taken girls down and finished them on the ground before. Keep that in mind. Jillian Robertson is just as good of a grappler as she is. And she decided, I'm showing off my striking. And it looked much improved. She used to be just muscle everything, short little arms, not a great striker. It's very much improved. The Lupita Godinez, she wasn't able to take Lupi down, so she was forced to strike. She dropped Lupi. She ultimately lost a split decision, but her striking was much improved. Tisha Pennington, she only got 1 takedown. Tisha's very hard to take down, but her striking was much improved. She got a split win there. I thought she lost it, but I thought she won the Lupi one, so it evens out. And then Angela Hill, She took her down 3 times and landed over 100 significant strikes. And Angela Hill is a great striker. She is much improved. Tabitha Ricci is someone that I used to want to fade and made me a believer. She's improving each and every time. And I think if she just strikes with Jan, she will lose. If she strikes with Jan and mixes in the wrestling, I think she can finish Jan. I'm flirting with this under here, and when you really want to get fucking crazy, her knockout prop is plus 2,000. Her submission prop is like plus 1,400. If you want to play Tabitha Ricci inside the distance, it's not a bad play. I think it's very, very live. But if you want to be safe and just take her money line, I'm doing that too. I'm going to have violence sprinkled all over this fight. I think I'm going to take the under at plus 300. I'm going to take Tabitha Ricci at plus 175. And I'm going to take, honestly, I might sprinkle her knockout and her submission at plus 1,400 and plus 2,000. If Jan just comes out here and wins a decision, I'm fucked. But if Tabitha comes out here and gets a finish, I'm rolling in the dough. The pick is Tabitha Ricci. The bet is Tabitha Ricci. And that takes us to the main event. If you haven't already, smash that like button, give a follower on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, share, do whatever you can to support the pod. We have Peter Yan at minus 320 now going up against Davidson Figueiredo at plus 250, over 4.5 minus 175, under 4.5 at plus 135. Let's start with Figueroa. Figueroa is a former flyweight champion of the world, but this fight is at bantamweight. At bantamweight, Figgy is 36 years old. He has good striking. He has good jiu-jitsu. He has good wrestling. He has okay cardio generally. I've seen it look bad at times, but he can generally go 25. He is a little lower volume, only throwing 3 significant strikes per minute. He's very hittable because he's throwing so little, but he throws with a ton of power. And that has translated. We've seen it translate rocking Rob Font, but Rob Font's a little chinny. We saw it translate rocking Marlon Vera, dropping him in his last fight. And of course, when he was fighting 25 pounders, he dropped Brandon Moreno multiple times. He beat the hell out of poor Joseph Benavidez like 4 times. He just kept beating the hell out of Joseph Benavidez. Yeah, you saw him get a ton of quality wins. He relies on that power instead of volume, but it is damage over control. It's damage over everything with MMA judging right now. On the other side, we have Peter Yan. Peter Yan is 31 years old, which is crazy to say because he's been in the UFC forever. He's also been a champ in the UFC, but he's been a champ at bantamweight where this fight is taking place. He has good striking. He has okay jiu-jitsu. He has good wrestling, 85% takedown defense, and he fought Aljo. He fought Marab. He fought Aljo twice. He fought Uriah Faber. Like, he fought really, really, really good wrestlers. He has good cardio. He's a little small for 135, which is interesting because, again, Figgy's coming up from 125, so they'll be around the same size here. Slow starting, very high volume, but starts extremely slow. He's never won a round one. He always gives up. That's not true. I thought he won round one against Sean O'Malley. Great level of competition, by the way. He's fought the who's who: Corey Sandhagen, Sean O'Malley, Aljo, Marab. He's fought Jose Aldo, Uriah Faber. He's fought everyone. He just always does this analyzing thing where he's able to give you round one, just so that he can pick up on your tendencies. And then he's a builder, man. He gets better round two. He usually kills you round three, finish you round four, and if you're still around and tough enough in round five, just dominates you around five. Like, he literally gives up one so that he can figure you out and keep building and building and building. And I think that's what he's going to do here. I don't think it's any different. I think he's the faster fighter. I think he's the better striker. I think he has the better cardio. I think Figgy's going to have difficulty taking him down. I think Figgy has a better jiu-jitsu. But if you can't take him down, he can't use it. And Peter Yan's probably not going to shoot on Figgy. He's probably going to let Figgy swing himself out in round one and then just capitalize. He's the better striker. He's going to dictate where the fight is. And I'm going to have a lot of Peter Yan in a lot of my parlays. So the pick is going to be Peter Yan. The bet is going to be Peter Yan. And that's UFC Macau. Again, it's an interesting fight card. A lot of hard fights on here. Not the greatest fight card on earth. But it's free. You can't complain. Wake up, get your ass up early, make some bets, make some money. Let's go.